Hi, everyone, and welcome to UI5ers Live. Great to have you here. We are joined today by our special guest, Jan Mumenthaler, the architect of the UI5 framework team. Hi, Jan. You're muted.
Hi, I'm muted. Sorry.
Yeah, and then we have our regulars, Peter Music.
Hi, everyone.
And Andreas Kunz.
Hello, everyone.
We have two exciting topics for you today. First, Jan will dive into the demo he gave at this year's UI5Con keynote, illuminating the lightweight Bootstrap for UI5 and the modularization of the core. And next, we'll discuss the recent announcement regarding the non-experimental status of TypeScript support for UI5 development and what to expect with TypeScript in UI5 1.116. So let's dive right in. Jan.
Hi, everyone. I'll show you a little bit what we did so far regarding new bootstrapping of UI5 and Modular Core. And let's start with some applications we already shared where you can experiment a little bit on your own and where I can showcase what we've done so far. On GitHub, you will find two sample applications we provide to experiment with. It's our famous to-do application in two flavors, one using web components as controls and one using some M controls. Below you can find a basic description and some words on differences between the old and the new Bootstrap. We will come to that later. Maybe I could start by cloning this repository to get both apps on my computer running. Go to the folder, open Visual Code. So we now have both flavors here. Let's start to look into the web components variant. It's a normal web application using controllers, some CSS, some translated text, a model for the to-dos, view, an application, a component, a manifest, all you know. And inside you will find two flavors of index HTML, one bootstrapping the old sap.ui.getCore.
Jan, can you increase the size one level?
For sure.
Good. Thank you.
And the other one bootstrapping the new sap.ui boot. Maybe I do an install first because it takes some time. Yeah. So it can run in between. Oh, I have to go to the application folder. It's app, UI5 webc, install now. Okay. Let's look at the differences of the two bootstraps. If you look at the old one, you all know you have to register some resource roots so we can find the init module because it uses its own namespace, and the app is your module starting the application. You also want to somehow load the component bundle. So we specified it here as bundle, so the Bootstrap can load it before starting the application. The difference to the new Bootstrap is in here. We have same sap.ui modules, but we have the square brackets. That means in the old version, if you did not already build your application, this bundle will not exist and the boot will fail. In the new one, we provide an optional thing, the square brackets. So if we can't load the component bundle, the application will still boot and start, but using single requests for the modules and resources because the bundles are not yet there. You also must not register resource roots like here. You can do it in the init call directly by doing the add, where you specify the local path where you find the resources. So you give us an init module, and under the hood, we take the namespace and map it to the local path. So let's quickly do build and run it. Takes on 15 seconds, I think.
Yeah, also here there were some improvements coming soon.
Yeah, 16 seconds. Now let's serve it.
the build performance will also improve here.
It's dead. Doesn't look too good because I built against an old branch. That's not a good idea because the new Bootstrap isn't in there. Sorry for that. Let's do it again. Another 15 seconds are wasted, but we can get it up.
Which branch is it, Jan, which need to be looked into? What was
1.117 or a snapshot after 1.116? Was it boot contained?
The repository is organized in the runtime branches, or
This repository?
yeah,
We use a workspace YAML to
okay,
to point to our local UI5 clone.
okay.
It's beside our or this application
Where you load the UI5 from.
Exactly.
Means so also that if you want to test it and build it, that you have to wait until the release of 1.117, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, and I was on a 114.
Or
something.
for sure, you can also use this workspace concept and clone the GitHub SAP OpenUI5 repository. This would be the same, right? It's the same setup.
Exactly. That's what I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Now let's try to run it. Now it's coming up. It's much more better. Let's first look at the flavor or the old flavor, the legacy one. Okay. What we can see here is the network trace. If you can see here, we load a lot of things. It's a huge footprint, 102 megabyte, unzipped, it's nearly 5. And it's huge core, 200K, and unzipped, it's 700. We need to load the complete core library and then the component bundle containing the application. And after that, we could start creating and rendering the application. And we do all that stuff more or less in a sequential manner. So core, library preload, component bundle, and then we start the application. If it comes to performance and how we can get better, we normally do a LiDAR score to get an idea where we are and how we can improve. So let's simply do it. Take some seconds and we get a score, hopefully. Here we are. So it's not too bad. It's yellow, not red, but 62. But what you can see below, we still have room for improvement. The first pane is late, so interaction with DOM comes late. The largest contentful pane, which means more or less the complete application rendering the component and its view, is nearly 7 seconds. Some blocking time, layout shift, and an overall bad, or at least yellow, but not too good speed in.
Those times are simulating some mobile network.
Exactly.
So it's not like the fastest possible, but a realistic mobile network speed.
Yeah, if you do the check with a computer, yeah, then it's really approximately 200 already with a classic Bootstrap.
I think it's fast, but not sure if it's 100. Maybe on my machine, yeah, but but mobile throttling, CPU throttling is 4 times, and slow or fast 4G, something like that.
Yeah, but for us, the mobile scenario is really the reference scenario, because if it runs there fast, then it will be also incredibly fast on the desktop scenarios.
Exactly, and it's all cold cache. You have to mention that as well. So no caching in between, or browser caching involved here. Now let's look into our new Bootstrap variant. So what you directly see is the footprint decrease a lot. So it's more than 50% decrease. So it's only 500K and 2.1 megabyte unzipped. And you also see a lot of requests, but smaller ones. So we do not need, or we do not load the complete core library. We try to only load stuff we really need to bring up that application. So let's start with boot. It's really small. It's only 30K instead of 200 before. So the boot decreased a lot. After we booted that script, we already can interact with DOM. And all the rest is loaded in parallel, not as we saw before in a sequential manner. So the loading is more efficient, less Bootstrap, and we load a lot of stuff in parallel. And the rest down here is CSS and the data, that's more or less the same. Now let's do LiDAR here. Do it on a mobile.
With computer, then we have definitely 100.
For a really good score.
120.
We exceed the 100 and
Okay, looks good, I think. It's at least green, it's 91. And what improved is the first contentful pane. So we interacted with Dom earlier. The largest contentful pane is the application itself. It's half the time. It's 3.5 instead of nearly 7 seconds. Blocking time also improved. Layout shift is more or less same, and speed index looks good as well. It's green. So now maybe let's look into how we could achieve reducing the footprint and the parallel loading and all this stuff. Let's start Visual Code, but not from here, but from an open UI5. Actual master looks good, so we go to Visual Code, or maybe I start with an old branch. So what we try to do is break up big blocks or monolithic modules into more fine granular, or split it up into smaller pieces, smaller modules. Yeah, we can do so by reducing dependency trees. So we have a lot of modules that or requires or imports too much other modules with a lot of other dependencies. So trees are huge. We try to get rid of that by splitting things up. Also splitting up libraries into chunks. As you saw before in network trace, we have an eventing, we have something cares about calendar, something cares about libraries, and so on and so on. And we also try to reduce dependency, not dependency chains, inheritance chains, because a lot of modules inherit from base classes, and it's not really needed because the functionality of the base class is not needed for the functionality of the module. And what we also do, we moved a lot of code to our base package. And base package means small modules and no dependency to DOM or jQuery. And that means you can reuse it and maybe on Node and in different environments.
So with base package, you mean in the SAP UI5 library, we split up the library in 2 namespaces, more or less, or a few more for sure, but SAP base and SAP UI. So these 2 layers, they differentiate between the part which is completely browser agnostic, the base parts, and the UI parts, which are then related to the browser.
Exactly. So we try to move all basic stuff down to base. Okay, maybe we can look into one example, that's configuration. If you look at configuration, it's nearly 3,000 lines of code.
Nearly every developer in UI5 at some point of time touched this file.
Yeah, you need it. You need it.
And added something.
Even if you want to get the language, only the language, it's DE or ENUS or whatever you want, you need to load the complete module with all its lines of code and all its dependencies. And we have in here a lot of dependencies. Yeah. And what we tried here is it's only getting static values you provide via Bootstrap and URL or via our global configuration options. So we split it up, the complete configuration, into a base configuration that's already contained in the boot script. Sap.ui boot contains all you need to have access to configuration, and all that is contained in base. Yeah. And for the application, we split it up, the complete component and all the getters and setters you will find below here, into different clusters or different modules. So for example, I switch to an actual master. I can see it better. In base, you will find, well, it's not UI base, it's base. You'll find formatting. Formatting is all about formatting options. It's no longer more containing configuration. You have a localization that deals with language settings. So if you want to get a language or the configured language, you can use localization instead. Yeah, and we did that theming as well. If you are only interested in theming, apply a theme or get the configured theme, there's a theming module. So small chunks or small modules of code you can use instead of requiring or importing a big chunk, even if you need only one configuration option.
Can you open the sub-base config package on the left side?
Sub-base config, yeah, can do. There's only the memory provider in there.
That's the default one, which is available everywhere.
Yeah, because it's a little bit complicated. So as I already told, the complete configuration stuff is contained in the Bootstrap. So we decided to move it into the autoconfig. So the boot is only loader and configuration, autoconfig, that contains this basic access to configuration. It's all in here within the 30K. That's why you will not find any dedicated modules. But if you want to use it for in your modules or in your application, we also provide a base configuration that inherits from what we provided in the auto configuration. And you have a simple set and get access if you use the right configuration. So it's already there and it's small. Okay, we talked about the clusters. Let's maybe look into the core as well. The core, let's go back to an old branch. Look into the old core. You also can see a lot of dependencies, also configuration. So if you pack in the core for the old boot, you will have configuration. You will have element metadata, a lot of big modules. And why all these dependencies are needed is clear. The core provides a huge facade and a lot of public APIs. And all these public APIs are synchronous. So normally you require the core, get the facade, and you want to execute one of the public APIs, and all that needs to be there synchronous. We cannot refactor to an asynchronous variant. Do things asynchronous by lazy loading functionality if you need it. It's not possible in a compatible way. So what we decided here is to get rid of all that stuff. So the new boot will not have any public API or only one. I will come to that. And for all the rest, you will find here there's a public method section, public methods. You'll find in here, it's a list of all API provided by the core. We will provide an alternative access. For example, localization change is somewhere in here, some theming stuff. Theming will go to theming module. All the localization stuff of the core will move to localization. The rendering will be a rendering module or already is, and so on and so on. Library loading is library. Yeah. Message manager is a singleton. You simply can require and do some messaging, and all that stuff moves to an alternative API. Still not yet done. Experimental. All that stuff is not yet public, but we will now move things to the public domain. Okay, if we now look at the new boot. Where's the boot? It's hidden somewhere, maybe. No. Can't find the. Ah, yeah, I'm on the wrong branch. It's happened all the time. I want to show something, and it's the wrong branch. So here's the boot. That's a new Bootstrap script, and it's lightweight. Still some dependencies, but all small modules, and it's more or less a task runner. Yeah, and we define the task describing the boot in a manifest. Can show you. And the only public API is a ready promise. So that's the only thing you should be interested in. So when is the boot done? Change the ready promise instead. Attaching to some init events or deal with other public APIs. All relevant modules for the boot are in a boot package. Let me find it. Here's. So we need some configuration, run boot. That's not necessary in the future. Maybe I will not go into this in detail, but maybe let's look at the manifest. It's really simple. You have some points in time. You have a pre-boot where you can add tasks before we do the boot. Then the boot itself, It's only some tasks that will execute in some order, or in the order you define it here. And you can define post-boots or tasks that will execute it after the boot happened. All modules, bundles, and all necessary stuff is loaded. You can do other things. You will also have the possibility in the future to extend these manifests. So if you will or want to have an own boot, maybe you want to read configuration from some backend systems to provide it before we boot, because you need to add some libraries that needs to be loaded, or some modules, or the language is dependent on some backend configuration, don't know. You can put it in here, extend our manifest. It's not yet configurable, but it's already working. Yeah, but yeah.
But just to keep in mind, so the idea is not that everyone has to write its own Bootstrap. There will be a default one, a simple one, like we had it before, but it's lightweight. And if you have special requirements to do on a Bootstrap in an early phase, then you can use this concept to extend it and plug in. Yeah, in regards to FLP and all that other runners or application runners or however you want to call it, you can plug in here. That's more or less it. And all things happen during the boot itself. It's more or less driven by configuration. So if you look into the load modules, yeah, we look into our base configuration, check if some modules are configured, if libraries are configured, and if so, only then we load the next bundle asynchronous and load all that stuff we need. So if you do not configure anything, it's only some 80 lines of code, minified. It's less. We need to load. That's more or less it I want to show today. Cool. Yeah, to summarize it quickly, Jan, so what we have seen today is more or less that we have this lightweight Bootstrap, this SAP UI boot.js will be established. So it comes up really with a much smaller footprint, as it's only the module loader plus a basic configuration. We have seen the split of the modules into fine granular modules, especially the big ones, like the configuration and the core, which are the singletons of the framework, into, let's say, these fine granular modules, like that you have special theming module, load library module, or whatever. And if you need something, then you only need to load these small modules. So in the future, it will not be any more core get, or the sap.ui.getCore do something. So you would require the individual module and then do something with that. Yeah, and especially also there's a lot of things going on also behind the scenes, cleaning up in many places, jQuery and stuff like that. We try to get rid more and more on one or the other places. So there's still a lot of things going on there. Cool.
I don't see any questions, right? So I guess this is something really people have to look into it and yeah, give it a try. Maybe you can check the next projects also with it and give us feedback if you find something there.
There's one question now coming in. Dimitar asked about will the declarative support for components continue to work with the new Bootstrap?
That's a good question. We did not think about it, but at
the moment it's not implemented, but it could be a separate module, or that...
Yeah, exactly. It shouldn't be a big problem because it's an init module, yeah, and some HTML you have to define, and you still will have an index HTML, and you will have an init module will load after the Bootstrap, and if it's component support.
Yeah, if it's the component support you bet in the Bootstrap, then it works out of the box immediately.
Exactly.
Okay, Andreas, it's our turn. TypeScript.
Right. So yeah, let's use the rest of the time for talking a bit more about TypeScript and what has been changed recently and over the past year. So the most significant thing is, of course, that we announced at UI5Con that TypeScript is now available for productive use. So it's totally supported. It's no longer in experimental beta as it was written all the time. So that's the big thing. And by the way, as we are talking about this and the changes, we have also published a blog post right before the meeting where you can read up on everything that we are talking about right now. Maybe if you don't have enough time for something, but it will also be this in this blog post here. So, for example, the statement about the UI5 type definitions now being available for productive use, that does not necessarily mean that they will be like compatible for eternity. That what compiles now will also compile with any future version. But that's a difference to compatibility in the UI5 runtime, because when the type definitions no longer compile because you have to adapt in some way, this doesn't break any running app. That's the one most important thing, that no customer is like affected by such changes. And the second thing is that you can easily mitigate the problem by just remain on the old type definitions, but you can still independently use the new UI5 version. So that's very important to keep in mind. And we don't intend to break it all the time. It's just a small difference to the compatibility guarantee we have for the runtime, more or less. That's written down here. Anyway, the changes are, as always, in the release notes. So when there's something where you need to adapt, then it's definitely going to be written there. And yeah, let's just use the Yeoman generator again to create a simple app. So that's something that has not changed. I've shown it in the UI5 keynote as well. You still say use UI5 TS app to get the newest TypeScript application template running. And you always takes a while. I think it was the same in the keynote. And let's now look at some points in more detail that have changed since last year. So you can still just accept everything to get started. And if I say code, because it has gone into this directory, then my VS Code will open. And now this is the up-to-date template with some of the changes now being explained. For example, something that has changed is the name of the type definitions of UI5. So it's no longer at OpenUI5 or sap.ui.5 TS types ESM. That was the old one until like 2-3 months ago. Now we publish the same type, so it's the same content as TS types and as just types. And you should use this now because the others we won't update in a couple of months anymore. And if you're using still the TS types with globals, those are really, really deprecated, and you shouldn't use globals in UI5 code at all. So please switch to the OpenUI5 types or sap.ui.5 types. The ones from definitely type, the add types OpenUI5, they are also still fine. So that's the same thing as here, just provided in a different channel. So that's one of the changes that we have in the template. Peter, I think you want to show more the structural changes surrounding the web folder. Do you take over?
I can do so. So let me just quickly share my screen. I cannot share my another one, or I can explain it also like that. It's okay. But then you have to follow my.
I will. I read your mind and click where you want.
Okay. So in the structural changes, so one big thing is that we got rid of this source folder. I personally also didn't like that in the beginning, that we had this separation of source and web app folder that we used then Babel to watch or to do the build steps as script tags and moving things from the source to the web app folder, doing the transpiling there. And from then on, the UI5 tooling takes care to package in things. So everything is now built in. And if you now see in the package JSON how clear this structure is. So if you see the script, so we have the build script now on top, you're jumping. The build script, so you just need to call now UI5 build, that's all. And the whole tooling is running then under the hood. And the same happens when you start the application. Then there is a middleware doing the trick. And if you now look in the UI5 YAML, we implemented two, the tooling extension, the UI5 tooling transpile, and it comes with a custom task and a custom middleware. And you see it's configuration free, so you do not need to worry what's in there. So if you have a TypeScript project, it knows what to do, and it does then by default the transpilation of the project. So there is no custom Babel RC necessary, because it knows that if it's a TypeScript project, it needs to run with the Babel preset TypeScript, the Babel preset tooling modules UI5. This is the one which we have gotten from Ryan Murphy and we use, and we extended it to work even better with our newest types, what we have available. And then it finally also does run the Babel preset env to compile your code or transpile your code down to the target browser stack you need. And by default, we use the default browser stack, which already supports then most of the recent language features, then like also async await doesn't need to be transpiled. So looking into web app folder, there is now the component PS inside, and more or less, it's like it's expected, so it just works out of the box, and there is nothing special anymore to be known. So you just put your TypeScript stuff inside, and it more or less works. Besides that, we completed also the end-to-end flow of the project by adding also the testing into the project. This was always something where I got questions by people from the community and even in-house in SAP who asked me, how does testing work? So basically Karma testing wasn't so complicated, but the complicated part was finally if it comes to coverage testing. And for the coverage testing also, we looked into that to make that even simpler. And we have these 3 steps here, Karma as the test-driven development script. So if you start that, it starts the Karma server and it waits for changes and then re-evaluates them. We have then the Karma CI job, which runs headless. And we have the Karma CI cof job, and this is the coverage tests, and Andreas is now executing that. So in the npm test, you execute the linting and the Karma CI cof. And if you now look into the configuration of Karma CI cof while it's building and testing, we can see that the configuration is pretty straightforward. So there's one thing you really need to know, which is special in this case. It's for the preprocessor of the TypeScript file, don't use the coverage, the coverage plugin of Karma, because this doesn't know about our Babel configuration. So you need to use the UI5-transpile processor, and with that it uses the same configuration as the UI5 tooling is using to convert your TypeScript files for the Karma testing into JavaScript files. But as a reporter, we continue to use the official coverage reporter, and also then on the bottom you see in the coverage reporter itself the different reports: HTML, Kubatura, CAF only, and text summary. And the text summary is what you see in the console now at the bottom. But in the coverage folder, you then see finally also here in the report HTML, this one's, and the report HTML, this index file. And there, as you would do it or see it also for JavaScript files, you see also for the TypeScript files now really the coverage in line properly. And this was also the result of having now the toolchain completely reworked in a way that it works seamless out of the box, and as you would expect it. One last thing, because this question also came, Karma is now deprecated. We know about that. For the time being, as long as we do not have or say about or talk about an alternative, Karma is still supported for us, and we continue to give support for that. As soon as we decide for a new testing tool, then we will also communicate this here in one of the UI5ers live session. There will then be also blog posts, and we will also adopt our templates in that direction. And with that, Andreas, I think you want to tell a bit more about the testing itself, right?
Exactly, about the implementation of the tests, because like last year we didn't have any tests included in this template and in the Hello World app and so on, because we had mostly some trouble adapting the OPA API, the OPA test APIs to the typed world, because the OPA APIs are interesting. They are morphing from one thing into the other. They are at the same time, they are instance of OPA, they are a promise, and they are something custom built by the application developer. And this, to fit this into a typed world, was a bit challenging. And this is why we have done some changes in the recommendations we have made. So for testing, the overall setup is still pretty straightforward. It's just everything written in TypeScript, which doesn't even look different here, I think, than JavaScript. One thing that we have changed a bit, because we have have now this ES6 module way of writing everything is the collection of the different tests, for example, the OPA journeys. We first stop the auto start of QUnit, and then we use promise all to import with a ES6 import of the modules in an asynchronous way. We can import all the modules, so all the journeys. We would import another one and another one and another one. So request just the list of journeys that we want to execute. And once they are loaded, then we call QUnit start. So this has changed a bit because we are now using the module imports. The unit tests themselves have not changed. The way of writing them is pretty straightforward. It looks just like JavaScript, I would say. There's no real difference, so nothing to learn about them. The thing that has changed most is the implementation of the OPA tests, because we couldn't really fit the old APIs to TypeScript very well. And we have decided to simplify everything. In the past, we would have an OPA test. I don't think I need the console anymore. We would have as arguments to the OPA test callback function, we would have the given, when, then, with the assertions and actions and everything. And you would say, when on the main, given on the main page I start my UI component, when I do something, then I should see something. This is very close to natural language, but makes things much more difficult if you have to put something into OPA first and then get it back here as some argument. So we said, well, let's just implement a class that we load here. And on this class, we have the methods we want to use in the test. So it's not separated entities anymore where you have the actions and the assertions, but basically the name says it all. It's telling enough. On the main page, I do something. On the main page, I should see something.
Is there someone in the call who wants to give an when then back?
So if you want, we have somewhere, we have a proposal how you can do that. You have to, if you have time later on, I can show it. But basically, it makes things a bit more complex. You have to define all the whens and then somewhere else and assign them to OPA. Then you can still have it, but basically it's...
No one typed something in the chat, so I don't expect that.
And just for completeness, the test is straightforward to write again, and this is basically what we want. That something is very simple. And the main page, just to have a look at that one. Oh, default class main page here. The page itself extends OPA5, so you can say this.wait for and use other OPA methods. And this is where these I do something and I should see something methods are defined. So this is not much different again. There were also lots of improvements in this wait for, in the success callback. What are the parameters? Is an array or a single one and so on? It depends on the other parameters given. And this has been also improved in the recent months a lot. So this is how the testing has now been proposed and what we did for the testing area. A short look on the watch, okay. Other improvements include, for example, event handlers. When I say on change and do something to have an event handler for an input change, for example, then these events are now typed. So in the past, you would just write event, but now you can write the name of the control, but the one where actually the event is defined. So it might be a basis class like input base, and then a $ character. That's not a $. That's a $. Input base, and then the name of the event. So input base change event. It's also proposed again by TypeScript already. So this is how the event names are created. And when now I say event.get parameter, then I get immediately code completion for the strings even that I can pass here. So I cannot mistype the value also. TypeScript will tell us, no, that doesn't exist. But when it's typed correctly, then not only the string is checked, but also then also the type of the parameter. It's a string here is correct. So that helps a lot with using events. And there are other changes, but we're getting close to maybe just to mention the device API. Now you don't import support from, as a named export from sap.ui device, but you always import the device itself. This is something that is used almost in every app, so this is why I mentioned it. And when you use it, then support and so on are on the default export, so on the device itself. So this is a change that has been done like 3 months ago or so, that you might need to adapt to when you upgrade to the current version 1.116, which is the public one. By the way, all these changes are bundled together in a new tutorial. If you have not seen that, learn app development UI5 with TypeScript. It's basically the same tutorial that we have done for the UI5 conference, which was not recorded. Now we get some advertisement, but which basically in 100 minutes walks you through the template generation, some app development, then using a third-party library in TypeScript from NPM, then even control development, and in the end also the testing. So the entire like walkthrough, how we do all the things that you know how to do in UI5, how to do them in TypeScript. So that's basically covered in this video that we add. And this would be worth watching if you just want to get into TypeScript development. One last thing, you cannot only do application development in TypeScript, but also control library development. So Peter, maybe you want to talk about that. We've also done some recent changes for this. So when you consume this library in an application, you also want all the type support and so on, and the type safety and the code completion. And we have done something for this.
So basically, there was also one question, but maybe we do that quickly first. So for the TypeScript development with libraries, we also added a bit more support, because one thing which was always a bit complicated is then if you develop these libraries and you want to use that in other libraries, like having a dependency to that, you missed the code completion for that, or you needed to maintain the TS config a bit in a way that it was a bit cumbersome to maintain that. So now we looked a bit how it should work by default, and by default we now have in the package JSON of libraries now a link to the types. So this is also what the UI5 tooling transpile now asks you if you develop a TypeScript library to maintain these types, this index DTS. And then in this dist folder, we generate then this index for that. So you see also a list of which types were related to that when building, and you find also references to all the types that the type definition generated for your library. And with that information, now the consuming application knows what kind of type definitions are available for this library and makes it available when consuming that. So I think also this would be worth to have an extra session in one of the next UI5ers live to explain this here a little bit more in detail and to see what the benefit of this is.
So some of these files are those generated by this TS interface generator that you use during control development, which generate the public accessors for the aggregations, properties, events, and so on. So these are the ones that are generated inside the sources by this tool. And the other ones, those are generated during the build by the TypeScript compiler itself as a sort of interface of the stuff that is directly coded in the control class. So if I go here, that's basically the control class. No, go to example TS, I'm sure. But it contains the methods and so on that you have implemented in the control itself. And this makes sure that both aspects of the controller are now available as in a typed manner for the consuming application.
Okay. There was one last thing about the given when then. If in the Fiori elements test library it's manifested, so I clicked answer live. So yeah, that's one thing we have to check out, and also with the Fiori elements colleagues what that means. Yeah, it's just that we are also looking forward on a way how we can see what how our testing, OPA testing will evolve here. Thomas also asked one question why we have an instance of the page object. The instance is related to the fact that we want to inherit from that in having also these functions which come from the OPA5 test. So this on the main page, I start my UI component. Things like this is, yeah, this can be still evolved. So it's not completely carved in stone, all that, but this scenario works if you do it like that. But you can also think of, or we can also think of making OPA5 more static usable, or the page objects more static usable in the future. Then you would here call OPA5 I start my component, and the page object I press whatever. So things like this could potentially also work then.
So with the sap.ui guys, we are in contact. They have the given when then still, but they say they have found a way how it still works all nicely together. Maybe we can make them documented in a way that is also embedded in our documentation, so it's not something that is like appearing separate. And we're not saying that the given when then may not be there. That's still something that is possible. So if you go to the UI5 TypeScript Hello World repository and the testing branch, then you see that's sort of a draft. So it's the current state of the repository where you still see some experiments how to make the given when then still work. And this is where you can see a setup where you have the given when then. So you have, for example, to create a list of all the page actions and page assertions and declare them as a when and then pass them to OPA and so on. So it's a bit more complex, but you can still get the same setup if you want to. If you check out this UI5 TypeScript Hello World repository in the testing branch right now, we might change this branch, so you have to go back in history to this commit more or less. Okay, any more questions?
No, I think currently there are no open questions with regards to TypeScript.
Okay.
There had been like 2 additional questions to the former performance by Jan. Jan and Peter answered them in the chat, but maybe you can just answer it quickly also here.
So one was about whether we consider Vite as a development server for the instead of the UI5 tooling, or as in addition to the UI5 tooling. So Vite.js has some requirements to the modules which can be loaded or used with that. So it's based on the ES modules. UI5 isn't on that level yet, so we don't have ES modules. We still have our AMD-like modules, and therefore, it's not so easily to be used in that context. And it's not that we don't monitor that or look into what's happening there on the tooling stack. So the Vite.js tooling is used already for the web components on our side. But for UI5 development, we have also special requirements, and this has been dropped into the UI5 tooling. The other question was, I guess this will improve especially apps with not a lot of dependencies. So this was going to the Modular Core and the Bootstrap topic. What happens with Fiori elements? Will it help there as well? And the answer for that for sure this is not immediately reflecting there, but overall reducing the footprint, reducing sizes, introducing chunking will then also stepwise then reach the higher levels of the framework. This is something we are also working on, but for sure we tend first to improve the performance of especially the self-contained apps or the low-level apps, and then step by step go higher the level.
Yeah, scale up to bigger ones. And I think we also could improve here, because even Fiori elements did not need all the framework stuff for a list report, for example. It's only a subset of functionality you need. You must not load everything. And could improve here also.
And for sure, things like chunking also, this will definitely also reach these layers. So, but that's also something I mentioned it at the UI5 Con in the keynote quickly. So for the FLP scenarios or these higher level scenarios, so the chunking is one thing. What we want to try forward to make libraries much smaller to be able to load only these or the parts, the subsets we really need. But this is also currently still under investigation how this can work out.
Okay, and the last one, or the last question was if you get rid of the core facade, you cannot fiddle around in DevTools console with sap.ui.getCore. Yes, you cannot do this, but as we want to get rid of globals anyway for the next level or sap UI5 2.0, it's not possible in both new Bootstrap or Bootstrap, doesn't matter.
You know that you can easily require a module if it's loaded already. Use sap.ui.getCore and put just in the brackets with the string value the name of the module. For example, SAP UI, let's say base configuration or something like that. And then you get the instance of that configuration or the module. And with that, you can also do the same thing. So it's learning a little bit a different way of how to interact with a module set. But overall, I think getting rid of this central singleton will be massively improve overall performance and also the modularization, and it will definitely clean up the whole foundation and code base.
Yeah, you will find ideas to come around that.
Okay.
So great overtime again. So, but as we won't have any session in August, I think that's okay. So yeah. So thanks you all for joining today's discussion. Thank you, Jan, to joining UI5ers Live the first time. Hope it wasn't the last time. So, and the next UI5ers Live will take place on September 13th. So as I said, no session in August, but in September we will be back with some hopefully interesting topics for you. And I hope all of you will be there again. So see you all in September. Have a great summer.
Yeah, have great summer holidays and see you soon.
So, bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye.